Janus Rasmussen, thank you so much for joining us, mate. How's it going?
I'm feeling good. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for joining. Honestly, I'll tell you a really quick story. When Kiasmos, you put out your first album, I became obsessed with it, and I was into really heavy club music at the time. And it was a really refreshing break, and it was just after I'd moved to London. You guys played a gig at Hackney St. John, and I was there in a church, and it was mind blowing to have just moved to London and see you play. In that time, it was really, really special. So it's really nice to meet you. And I'm really excited to hear about you and your sort of creative process, because I have only just started making my own music, been DJing for years, and I've only just started making my own. So what I'd love to get to help me overcome some of my own fears is, what was your earliest musical endeavors? What were they like? Was there a creative spot? What started the musical journey for you, and what did that look like?
So I'm originally from the Faroe Islands, and which is really remote and middle of the Atlantic. 50
Yeah.
population of 50,000 people, so it's tiny. So I didn't have a lot of opportunities to see shows, and so actually, like when I started, I don't know 11. I started playing guitar, and I got into electronic music at the same time. So I was really into FX Twin at this time. So
Yeah.
I was kind of in between listening to Radiohead and FX Twin. Those were kind of my two go-to.
They are two of my absolute favorites as well. That's nice to hear.
Yeah, and I think I think at this time there were no shops in the Faroe Islands where you could buy software or any sequence or anything like that. So I mean I have to admit that I did pirate some of the first software that I made music with, but it was what I could get my hands on,
Yep.
and it was just on the home computer. Like, yeah, I think it was even the first thing you remember a program called EJ?
EJ, no. What was that?
It was kind of like a game that was made, you were supposed to make music with, but it came with a lot of loops that all were like the same key, so everything just sounded great together.
Yep.
But like me and my friend, which I was really making a lot of music together with, we kind of we're almost brothers. We've known each other since first grade. We would like find a way to kind of hack the program so that we could chop up the loops and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the program would absolutely hate it, so it would like crash all the time. And then eventually we found out that this was not going to cut it, so we moved over to Cakewalk Sonar, I think.
I've used it a couple of times. I didn't spend too long in it, but I did know that Cakewalk made a DAW back in the day. Yeah, I experimented with a little bit. What was that like, the change?
Yeah, obviously this was a real DAW, so that was refreshing. But obviously we had no idea what we were doing, and we had no one to ask. We were just kids, and nobody was making electronic music or recording music. This is before the time people had home studios.
Yep.
So we were just doing whatever, really, and it's really impressive what we could actually get out of it, especially when thinking about we were trying to make music like Aphex Twin.
Yeah, yeah. So is that the kind of stuff that you were creating back? Like, was it more on the ambient side of Aphex, or was it more on the kind of breakbeaty, crazy, ameny stuff?
Yeah, more on that kind of side. So you know, the ambient stuff was a little bit too early for my age, or like when I started to get into Aphex Twin. So it was
Yep.
more the kind of Window Licker and Come to Daddy kind of thing.
Yeah, badass. Okay, amazing. And what were you doing within the software? How were you creating it? Were you using synthesizers? Were you just sampling stuff? What was the sort of, yeah, what did it look like?
No, we had nothing, no gear, nothing. It was just our home computers that were crashing all the time, and we were just using whatever was inside of, you know, Cakewalk
Yep.
before it became Cakewalk Sonar, and whatever was in there we used, and I, you know, would chop things up. I remember I didn't even have any samples, so I ordered something off, I think it was eBay, like early version of eBay, and I ordered one CD of samples. It was like the first thing I bought, and it came with a mail a few months later,
Yep.
and it had all these like really dodgy like samples that were called like Kanye and Timbaland and Neptunes. They were from. I'm not. I don't think they were from them, but I remember those were my first samples, and I still have them actually.
Oh, really? Have any of them made their way into any of your like kind of music? Do you ever go back to them and reuse them sometimes in anything that's ever sort of seen release? No?
No, I don't think so. They were really bad quality. I don't know where they were from. Just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
somebody just burning the CDs at home and selling them on eBay or something.
Yeah, for sure. And where did it go to from there? When did you get your first synthesizer? Because I can see obviously the rack behind you. You're very out of the box now. Look at that wall of beauty.
Yeah, well, it actually didn't happen until a little bit later because I was more into like playing in rock bands and stuff like that
Oh, I
through my
see.
whole teen years, and it wasn't until like I went first time to Iceland and I met more people there, and they were really into like synth music and stuff like that. And at that time, I hadn't really tried using synths, so it was
Okay.
really new to me, and we would just yeah, I eventually moved to Iceland when I was like 20 or something,
Hmm.
and we just became really obsessed with synthesizers. This is about like 2004 or 5,
Uh-huh.
and there was this whole kind of vibe at this point. Like there was this whole kind of what was it called? Future rave, or I can't remember what the genre was called. It was kind of like electro pop was really big back then. Justice, and I don't know exactly what it was.
Yep.
And that's when I really started to be interested in synths and production. And then I started using Ableton. At Ableton 5, I think was the first version I started using,
Okay.
and I've used it ever since.
So was it quite a natural progression once you found it? Was it a bit of a light bulb moment for you that this was the one that you were kind of going to stick with?
I think it was just because it was more like tailored towards electronic music, and you
Yep.
could take in, loops, and they would just sync automatically and stuff like that. Made it so much more easy to actually make electronic music with.
Yep.
While Cakewalk at the time was kind of like, your standard kind of sequencer for recording and mixing live stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I've been there ever since. I mean, I do use Pro Tools once in a while now, but mostly Ableton has become really powerful, and now it can do most of the things that other programs can do.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Ableton is definitely the way that I've sort of started. It's where I've started because, just everybody seems to use it for electronic music. The Flashbulb uses FL Studio to this day, and it's really incredible to see the sounds that he can pull out of it, because it's what most people tend to use as their first ever DAW is FL Studio, because it's so user friendly and easy to use. But Ableton, yeah, it definitely seems like the one for most electronic music.
Yeah, I think because it was that's what it was made for, really, originally, and especially for live performances. That's why I was really impressed with it. With the clip view and everything. I had never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And now that's kind of the standard way of doing the kind of live show. So it was the first program to kind of do that.
Yeah.
And there I am still today making tutorials about it.
Yeah, no, yeah. You have a very active YouTube page, a pretty incredible one, where with no fluff. But we'll get into that in a minute. But I want to jump back quickly, if I can, to synthesizers. So you moved to Iceland, and people were kind of really into their synths, and that's where you kind of fell in love with them. What was the first synthesizer you ever got?
I think actually I didn't buy an analog one. I think my first synthesizer I bought, I think you can see it down there. If I
Yeah.
move the microphone. That's the Access Virus TI.
Oh yeah,
With
my mate Beans is a fan of that one.
I really love it. It's broken, it doesn't turn on. But so the band that I was in had a lot of analog synths already.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were using a Moog Voyager. It's one up there, right there.
Yep.
And then we were using the Prophet 8, I think, later. And we had the Poly 6, It's probably one of my favorite ones. I don't own one today, unfortunately.
Okay.
So we needed something more kind of like a workhorse for the live shows, something that wasn't a old analog synth, something that could make more modern sounds with effects and everything. So the Access Virus was perfect for that because it has a whole effect section, delay and reverbs.
Oh, okay.
So for the live shows, it was for all the complicated sounds we had made on the records, I could recreate them kind of for the live shows without having pedals and extra stuff.
Yeah. So everything was able to be done within the box on the Access Virus rather than needing more additional gear.
Yeah, because we already had more gear than we were supposed to. Touring with all this vintage gear is, it's not a good idea, really. It just breaks. And at the time,
how many of you were in the band at the time?
we were 4 in the band.
Yeah, four members, all with their own egos about what gear they want, man.
Exactly. Yeah, that was exactly it. And at the time, there weren't many synths that had built-in effects. Like now, even the analog synths will have like reverb and delay to make life easier,
Ah, okay. So yeah, for the touring musician, they thought of you.
Yeah.
They got your suggested note. Yeah. So were you finding early successes with the band that you were in?
Yeah, that was originally why I moved to Iceland, is because this band got pretty, we were kind of popular. We were playing a lot in Iceland, and also then we started touring around Europe. And that was just really exciting for me, as I came from the Faroe Islands with very limited opportunities for touring and stuff like that. So it was actually on tour where I met Ólafur, and that was in 2007. He was actually our sound technician for our tour we did around Iceland.
Was?
Yeah, he was when I met him, he was working at a venue downtown Reykjavik as a sound technician at the venue. And we were always playing there with my band, and he really liked our band, and then we made our first LP, and we did a tour around Iceland, and we just asked him, as he had already mixed us so many times at that venue, to come along and be our sound technician. And then we just bonded in the van, talking about all this new club music that was out there, techno and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we started to kind of meet up and make some kind of music together, and eventually that became Kiasmos.
Yeah. Amazing. That's amazing. So how long had you been how long was it between you sort of two meeting before you just, obviously you were working on stuff before something came out from the two of you?
Actually, we met first time like 2007, and I think we released something in 2009, but that was just 2 tracks. Really heavy, evil kind of music. Nothing like the stuff that we actually then got, known for.
Yeah.
But our proper releases didn't happen until like 2012, and then the album happened 2014. So we weren't terribly productive this time.
Yeah.
Because I was also in the band still, and he was doing his stuff. So we were still doing other things.
I guess he, his sort of rise as well. He's became, amazingly popular ever, in that time as well, didn't he? With everything that was going on Erase tapes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And as I say, that album had a huge impact on me. How long were you in that band for before you decided to make the switch entirely to electronic music, or are you still doing band stuff now?
Well, this band that I was in disbanded in 2014, I think.
Okay.
No, maybe 13, 14. And that's around the time we released the Kiasmos album, and it was just going really well. So that became my main focus, pretty much right away.
Amazing. Okay. And now these days, with the work that you're doing, I assume Kiasmos is not your only project, no?
No. I mean, I have my own solo stuff now as well, and
yes,
I also work quite a bit as a producer and mixer for other artists. So I don't only make even electronic music. I just finished like a folk album for artists. So I really enjoy to work on a lot of different genres.
That's really awesome that you've managed to find additional ways to make money. To make a career for yourself outside of just putting out your own albums.
Yeah.
For people who are just sort of like chugging along, making beats and, putting their own stuff out, is there any way that you can think to, or any suggestions you can make for people to get into producing albums for others, not just their own stuff?
I mean, I guess you just have to be really open to try things out, different sound, different genres and stuff like that. For me, like I said, I come from a rock and roll background just as much as from electronic stuff. So for me, it's just natural for me to try different things out. And also, I find it kind of boring only to do the same thing. I want to experiment and have fun.
Yeah, for sure. And one of those ways that you've done that is through your YouTube page, which is very active in teaching people how to make their own music.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, it was actually when everything started with the pandemic. I mean, everything closed down. I didn't have any shows anymore, and I kind of quickly realized that I was a little bit too dependent on just playing shows. I needed something. I needed something more, to do really, because I was actually having a really hard time being in the studio because I was playing so much. So everything closed down, and I was like, okay, what can I do now? And I was like, I always wanted to make videos and stuff like that, and a friend had just moved to Iceland who was willing to kind of show me how to do it and help me out to get started. And then, then I just started the YouTube channel, and that was just that. I really liked it, really, and I was kind of surprised how much I enjoyed the process of making videos.
Yeah. Is there anybody who you watch quite a lot of that was an inspiration for you to start making videos of your own?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of tutorials, like YouTube channels that make tutorial stuff. But I think for me, actually, my biggest inspiration was just the fact that I knew that I didn't want to do the same thing everybody else was doing. Like everybody had kind of slow paced, they took their time. Like I wanted to make videos that were really to the point, didn't beat around the bush, and couldn't find a lot of content like that myself. So I was like, why don't I just create that?
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've definitely noticed about your videos is you don't waste any time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really refreshing actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's more common now than already last year when I started. I guess people just figured it out that videos were being really bloated with nothing. So that's a good trend we're seeing now on YouTube, at least.
Yeah, it's probably coming from TikTok, no?
I mean, probably. There's real competition for your attention these days. So if nothing happens within the, I don't know, 7 first seconds of a video or a song, people are bored. So that's just how it is.
Yeah, for sure. And one other thing that I've noticed that you're doing, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is you have a Patreon.
Yeah.
How long have you had a Patreon for? Was that something that came from the pandemic as well?
Yeah. Actually, I started February this year, I think, and it was just, I don't know. I just wanted to try it out. Really, I had seen other artists and creators do it, and obviously, when you start on YouTube, it takes a while before you can actually, monetize it and make money out of it. And so Patreon is a great way to, get some kind of extra income and to support what you're doing.
Yeah, and is there anything that sort of surprised you about creating a Patreon so far? I know you are quite new into the sort of Patreon journey, but is there anything that surprised you about creating it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a lot of what's the right word for it? I had a lot of kind of thoughts about it having a negative, effect on how people see you or something like that. It's like you have an extra Patreon thing, or is it like a money grab or something like that? But like when the pandemic, happened, it was literally all of your steady income was gone. So it really made sense to have something extra like this, and for the people that really want to support what you're doing to give them the opportunity to do so, because I think some of the content that I'm creating actually is worth it, so.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely enjoy it. Is there any advice you can give me to in the early days? Anything that you've learned over your time that maybe obstacles that you can see in my way? Because at the minute I can barely get past an 8-bar loop.
Yeah.
Is there anything that any tips that you can give somebody in my position just starting their music creation journey?
Yeah, the dreaded 8-bar loop. I mean, it's the thing is, that's the most fun part of making a new track, is that initial loop. That's the most. You're still not bored of it. Well, after 1 hour or two, you're gonna be bored of it. But I think a really fair point about exactly that phenomena is that you need to break out of it as soon as possible. So if you have a loop and you're happy about it, stop listening to it for too long and start arranging it.
Mhm.
Because what will happen is, an idea like a loop, it's not a track until you've put it into an arrangement, right? Put it into time. So what I will do is, now I'd really try and make some kind of arrangement out of it straight away, because that really reveals if there is proper potential in whatever you're creating at the moment. Because
Right.
anything can work for a loop. It's like, if you're just listening to it and nodding your head, it's fine. But uh, is it good enough to actually be a track?
Yeah.
That's when the arrangement comes in. And it also is really important to start practicing arrangement, because arranging is its own skill as well. It's like one thing is just making a beat, but then it's just arranging it in a way that it's gonna keep it exciting over time. And this is something
Yeah.
I struggle with myself. This is probably the hardest part in a lot of ways, is arranging a beat. It's like, you really like whatever you made, but now you have to commit to it. It's be okay. Now it actually has to be a song, and it's kind of scary sometimes, because you really like the idea, and then you start to arrange it, and then something sometimes gets lost, because now you actually have to tell a story with it, and sometimes the story doesn't really go the way you want it to, and you just have to be kind of fearless and just do it.
Do you lose? Do you think that are there loops that have been lost in the arrangement?
Happens all the time. It's it's probably the only reason why it does sometimes happen that I don't arrange right away, because I will love a loop so much that I know that there's the potential it won't make it through the arrangement phase, because a loop will change when it goes into an arrangement. So it happens all the time to me. Actually, I will love a loop that I made, and then I start arranging it, and then I'm like, oh, it's kind of lost. Sometimes
Right.
sometimes I can save it. There's just something wrong with the arrangement, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes that loop you made just didn't cut it.
Right. And I guess it seems quite sad that there's like a loop that you love so much that
Yeah,
then can never turn into something.
yeah, yeah. Definitely. I mean, I've had this problem. I think this is probably the problem I have the most when I'm writing music. Coming up with the loop and stuff like that is all fun and games. That's the most fun part. But then actually fleshing it out into a track,
Yeah.
there's this kind of like gamble. Is it gonna still work? Obviously, you can always go in there and really work on it, but sometimes it just doesn't translate into a track, and that's
Yeah.
a really sad feeling.
Yeah. And I guess it's not the end of the world. It just means that it wasn't meant to be, And then there's probably
But it also sometimes, it also is a really good reminder that you should make way more music than you think you have to. That's why you shouldn't get too married to an idea before it actually is a track.
I
So
see.
so you have to just sit down and continuously write new ideas all the time, and then make it into some kind of track and bounce it down to actually see if there is something there. And this is just something if you're only going to do it once a month, you're not going to end up with a great, set of songs in no time. You have to sit down all the time, because
Yeah.
most of them are just not going to make it. That's just a fact.
I
But if you
see.
but if you don't sit down and do it, There's no potential of the good tracks, popping up.
I hear you. I hear you. So, what's your critiquing process? When let's say you've done your 8-bar loop, you've made an arrangement, you bounce it down to an idea. Where are you listening to this? Are you doing it in your car? Are you doing it in the studio? Are you going for walks? Paint us a picture.
Yeah, I think all of those things. I mean, the first place is probably I walk out to the car, and if I'm really excited about whatever I was making, I'll play it while I drive home. But not always. If I'm too bored of it, or maybe I wasn't as satisfied with it as normally, I won't listen back to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, sometimes you shouldn't listen to it right away. Maybe it was a good idea. You just need to, not hear it for a little bit and come back to it. But usually I go home, listen in the car. Actually, in my phone, sometimes it's weird, even if it's a tiny speaker, and it won't play any bass, and it's not gonna properly present you with the song, but it will present you with the ideas and if because now you can't rely on the sub of the track anymore, so you have to listen to other stuff, and it sometimes I feel like if a track doesn't work on just your phone, I don't know if it's a good enough idea.
Yeah. Do you have people that you send those early works to that you trust their opinion, or are you potentially more insular and you wait until you're kind of ready to present it to the world?
No, I let people hear it all the time. Like I'm renting out my studio when I'm not here. So in the evenings and stuff like that, I rent it out, and sometimes they come in a little bit early, and I'm still playing around with it. And these are all people that I really trust and work with quite frequently, and I always play them whatever I have, and because I know that maybe they'll pick up on something that I can't hear on the moment because I've been sitting with it for too long. So usually one friend of mine will straight away be like, that part can be twice as long. And I'm like, you're right. You double it and you're like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And I'll do the same for them, whenever I'm coming in and hear them doing something. So it's kind of this, I think it's a really important quality to have as a producer, is to really be ready to listen to, not critique, but just ideas in general, because it's really easy to get stuck with an idea, and maybe you're complicating it yourself. Maybe the only thing you needed to do is make it longer or make it shorter. Like I said, the arrangement is kind of like where the track can, live or die.
Yeah. Don't be too married to your own ideas. Be open to feedback and not criticism, but just other people's input.
Yeah, if you surround yourself with people you really trust and you respect and you like what they do creatively, you should definitely be open to them and listen to whatever they have to say, because sometimes it can really make or break a track.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many tracks do you have on the go at any one time, would you say?
Quite a lot, actually. Especially because right now I'm through the whole situation in the world right now. I haven't really been like concentrating on like, am I making an album right now, or am I making this right now? I'm just writing tracks, and so right now there's a whole lot of open, unended tracks. A whole folder with just like that I haven't really gone to town with yet.
Yeah.
But once I decide, like now I'm writing an album, I actually go through and see if whatever is gonna, whatever I really want to actually work on, and what I feel like is gonna, what it is that I actually want to do. When I make an album, I kind of have an idea of like, I want it to be this kind of album. And so even if a track is really great, it's like, wow, but it doesn't fit whatever I'm doing right now. So it will have to wait in a different drawer until until the time presents itself for it.
Yeah. And when it comes to the album creation process, are you somebody who likes to work to deadlines, or do you like to have the freedom of, or do you like to have a freedom of kind of like an open end and it's done when it's done type thing?
I think the answer is always you want the freedom to have, your time and work as long as you want. But the thing is, it doesn't really work because, not for me at least, I'm a kind of perfectionist. I'll just go in there and just change it until it's, until I've actually ruined it. So sometimes I really do feel like deadlines, at least for me, really work, because I will have to work faster and not second guess myself too much, because a lot of the tracks that I spent the least time on are the ones that I like the most, that still have that kind of initial spark idea from, you know, it still has that kind of freshness to me. I wasn't working on it for like 2 years. And when I'm done with them, I'm already bored with it. I kind of wanted to still be fresh when I listen to it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Do you feel that you have to be in your studio to make music? Because I spoke to a guy a couple of weeks ago. His name's Ned Rush. He's also on YouTube, and he works quite a lot with Ableton.
Yeah.
And he was approached by someone and given a 2-week deadline, and he made the album not in either of his two studios. He grabbed his laptop and sat on his living room floor and just made the album on his laptop, and that was it. And it came out 2 weeks later. And his question to himself was, if I've spent all this money on these two studios, what's the point of either of them if when I'm, deadline comes and I just grab the laptop? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I guess my answer is I prefer sitting in my studio as I have all my gear here and stuff like that. But a lot of my best ideas are just like on my laptop at home, sometimes just sitting doing nothing, and then I just open up Ableton, put some samples together, and then I guess because there's no pressure, I'm just being really free. There sometimes the best ideas come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I will then probably go into the studio and actually record more synths and stuff like that, as I kind of like working with analog synths and the sounds of them.
Yeah.
But I kind of do fantasize about just being able to make a whole album on a laptop with samples and just mixing it there and calling it a day. That sounds really lovely to me, but I'm not really there yet. I really need my studio.
Yeah.
But not always. Not for the initial idea making. I can really do that anywhere. And a lot of times I do it at home late at night before I go to bed. I just fire up Ableton and just like give myself kind of 10 minutes to just throw paint at the wall,
Yeah. Yeah. And what does that look like? What tools are you using within Ableton to sketch out ideas? Is it usually drum related stuff? Is it sound related? Like what are the actual tools within Ableton that you gravitate towards?
If I do stuff like this, I try to just do something new every time. Like I think it's important for me to do a new angle on it every time. I do gravitate towards the same tools always, but when I do stuff like this, like a really quick exercise of writing something, I really try to be like, oh, I haven't used this synth in a while, and I just load it up to kind of surprise myself. At least that's the way I've been doing it lately. And actually, for example, one of the newest techniques I've been doing a lot of lately has been beatboxing. So I've been using this microphone.
Yeah.
And I have this exercise where I just make up a beat in my head. I don't think about BPM, key, anything. And I beatbox it into this microphone. And I go into Ableton, and then I figure out actually what BPM I was in, just to like put it into grid. And then I have the beat, like it doesn't sound great. I'm not a beatboxer. But the point is just to kind of like get something on top of my head into the computer right away. And then I'll kind of copy the kick pattern with a real kick sample underneath it and recreate the beat with other samples really quickly. And then I'll throw loops on top of it and something melodic. And I've done this to kind of surprise myself, because when I do this, I will write in a BPM that's not like, oh, it's going to be an 84 or something like that, which is not something I normally gravitate towards. But I'm really I really want to play around with other BPMs now. It's like I feel like electronic music needs to be more open to different BPMs.
Yeah.
So that's one technique I've been really loving these days. It's just like surprising myself with yeah, beatboxing and then recreating it, and it always turns out to be really fresh, and it's like wow. And obviously, then I just mute my original beatboxing. I don't use that. It's just the thing that initiates the idea.
It's really interesting that you say that because Timberland has a very similar technique. In his masterclass, he beatboxes and he
Yeah,
adds little elements on top. He even adds bass lines. He adds like little vocal ideas, and then
yeah,
him and his team build around that.
yeah. I haven't seen this masterclass, but I've seen like I don't know an ad for it or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I didn't think of it because of that. I just because I recently got this microphone in front of me right here for my
Yep.
videos mostly, and just I was like, I have this idea in my head. Let's just do this. Seems like the
Yeah.
fastest way to do it before I forget it. And yeah, so I've been enjoying that process for a bit.
Yeah, it's almost like it's creating the actual beat that is inside you rather than trying to think about what it is. It's just what is coming out.
Yeah, it's yeah because sometimes I feel like something sounds really great in my head, and I'm like, probably like let's just try and put it into the DAW and see if it is any good. And I mean, I'm not saying it works every time, but I feel like it's the quickest way. Like otherwise, I'm gonna have to load up few presets and a few drum samples,
Yeah.
and I have the idea in my head, and then when I'm gonna play it in, I don't play it even in the same way that I had it in my head. So in this way, I kind of bypass all those things. It's just like record. I literally push record without even putting BPN in or anything,
Yep.
and then I just sync it afterwards. And I do that on purpose because I want to like surprise myself and like, wow, I'm in 153. Okay, that interesting, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of the other ways that I've seen that you're quite creative is that you use field recordings as well. You'll actually go out and record in nature. Tell us about that. Is that something you've been doing for a long time?
No, not really. I mean, um, I do it sometimes, but a lot of times I also just do it here in the studio. I have like a studio pair of mics, and I will just record the room. I don't even stand in front of them. I just walk around, take a few percussion, and just play for a little bit, and I don't even play to anything. You know, I'm just like making a long file of, and then I bang on the piano a little bit, make noise, and then I will take the whole thing into a sampler and
Yep.
click the slice mode. So it will give me all these slice points, and I don't go in and fix anything. I just like then I go on the keyboard and play whatever is in there. And sometimes it's a tambourine hit, and sometimes it's a bang on the piano and a stomp. And
Yep.
then when you do that, you have these like all these weird sounds. And if you like do a flam on the keyboard or like playing really different octaves, and on one hand you have a tambourine, and one hand you have a knock on the piano,
Yep.
and it's kind of to present your way. It's kind of to present a palette of sounds in front of you as quickly as possible and without having too much control over it. So it's like you're just playing, and then we really naturally gravitate like a beat. When you hear sounds, we will immediately hear a rhythm inside of it. So if you play like with the sounds like that, you'll straight away make a pattern, and it's going to be a combination between a clap, knock on a piano, and a tambourine, right? And they're going to have imperfections because the slices are going to be a little bit too far into the sample or too early, and then you get this kind of groove on the tambourine because it's always a little bit early. So you're going to play it on the keyboard that way, and it's an exercise to kind of like force yourself to play with sounds really openly, like because all samples normally are just like start right at the start of the samples, right?
Yeah.
And then once I do that, I play the pattern. I push. You know, there's a function in Ableton called capture,
Okay.
and what that does is that you don't even have to push record before you like it's always listening basically. So if you're playing MIDI, it's always listening to it. So I really like to do that. So I do take the whole slices into there, start playing something, and once I have some kind of beat or percussion pattern going on, I'll just click capture, and it captures whatever you just did for a while, and then I'll and it also finds a BPN that you were kind of doing, and then I can take that loop and then you've made this weird, lively percussion loop or whatever it is that is
Yeah.
yours, and I just process it a little bit more, and then it sounds unique. It's never going to happen again that way, you know. I really
That's
like, yeah,
That's amazing. The fact that you've got, yeah, so it automatically finds the transients. You start mucking around, and because the human brain is trained to recognize patterns,
yeah,
you just automatically start to hear a beat through the way that the human mind works based on what you're just playing around with the sounds that you've created. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So that's something I do a lot. Whenever I need some kind of organic sound in the track, I just do this for a bit just to surprise myself. I do a few claps, like, and it's never going to be exactly the same. And you know, it takes no time to do this at all, you know. So,
Yeah.
and also then you can obviously just go like, it's kind of boring. Pitch it down 5 semitones. Now it's a bit dirtier. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or put
Amazing.
or put a lot of effects on it, like put 3 effects on it, and now all of a sudden, whatever you did that was really dry has reverb, delay, or saturation, and now it's again really interesting.
Yeah. That's awesome. Any other ways that creative tips like that you can share that immediately can spark some sort of creative juices?
I mean, I do this sometimes, not only with percussive stuff. So I will. You can also do this. For example, I do it sometimes on the Juno. I will just go over and hit record on Ableton for audio, and whilst recording, I'm just playing on the Juno, and I'm doing different chords and maybe sweeps through the Juno, or like, and I don't think about anything what I'm doing, just playing. And then if I find some kind of chords think are sound kind of cool, I play maybe another version of it where I'm change one note and then another
Yeah.
one that's a little bit different, stuff like that. And I stop the recording and I do the same thing. I put it into a simpler and put on slice mode.
Yeah.
Now you can also, all of a sudden, it's like you have your own samples, right? Everything you just played, you can play it as if they were chopped up a sample, like the Juno with chords.
Yeah.
So now you can have this kind of chopped off up chords from the Juno, and it feels like you're sampling, but it's your samples. You just created them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then put some effects on it, and it's really easy to kind of make, because like we're really great at making patterns out of what we're making. So even what you just maybe played, you were thinking about it in a certain way. Now you're presented with it maybe on push on pads. You're going to play it in a different sequence because you don't know where the slices are, and all of a sudden you're doing something new with it again. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah.
I really like to do that as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Listen, you've given a lot of information here that I'm really excited to try out. Can I just quickly ask you, do you do any of your own mastering?
No, I send it out to mastering usually. Although I do quite, like for my live sets, for example, I will do kind of a mastering for the live sets. So I will go and make kind of stems that you can master for, because there's like a master bus on the live sets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes for friends, I'll do a master, but nothing that's really released. Although I have actually done that. I do sometimes. That's the answer.
Because it seems like a really difficult and whole other realm of music that a lot of people don't tend to get into because it's so detailed and complex and micro changes that a lot of people aren't sort of trained for and or have the want to get into. I was just wondering if that's something that you've ever dabbled in.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Yeah, but it's also just something that you need a lot of experience, and also a lot of times you need the right room and acoustic and like just the ears for it, you know. And that's just something that some people have, and I'm happy to pay people for their extra pair of ears, because for me mastering is really like, okay, this is as far as I've gotten the track and I'm happy with it, but I know that I work with a guy called Sino Mikore,
Hmm.
and I know that he always finds a way to kind of just make it better. Like he will always find some way to make this track like just be better, just to balance it out in a way and present it in a way that I'm like, Yep, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
And that's just something that happens when you've been working on a track. I mean, you produce it, you mix it, and do everything on your own. It's really nice to just have a extra set of ears to be like show you the true potential of your track.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not saying they don't. It can't go wrong. I have got masters back where I've been like. I didn't really agree with the master, for example, if they took too much liberty with it or something like that. Not with Zeno, but in the past or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you just go and tell them why it shouldn't be like this or whatever.
Yeah.
But I find it a fascinating field to work in within.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Janus, you've been very generous with your time and very generous with your knowledge. I really appreciate you joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Janus Rasmussen, go check him out online, his YouTube channel, his Patreon page. Please go support him. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Been a pleasure.
Hello, legend. Thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. If you'd like that, I got a ton more of these interviews being uploaded constantly on the YouTube page. And I do a weekly mix on Mixcloud every Saturday. So if you can subscribe, like, comment, that helps out loads with the algorithm. And if you follow me everywhere and you like the sound of what's going on here, let me know. I'm always open to hearing from people. This is very new. I'm figuring it out as I go along. But yeah, there's tons more. Check out the other interviews. Follow me. Listen. Jump onto the live stream. Say hi. I'm a friendly dude, and I really appreciate you watching. So thank you so much. You're a fucking legend. Love ya. Peace. Bye.